Valkan had seen many species in his 20 cycles of service with the Galactic Coalition. The tall, crystalline Shentar who sang their orders across battlefields. The four-armed Krovan who could reload weapons faster than anyone else. The massive Thorgan heavy troops who stood like living walls against enemy fire. But when the human transport ship landed on Thresh 7, Valkan felt something he had not expected. Curiosity mixed with disappointment. The humans were small. Not tiny like the insect-like Vree, but noticeably shorter than most Coalition species. They wore bulky armor that seemed to add more weight than protection. Their faces were soft, covered in fragile skin that showed every emotion. No scales, no protective plates, no natural weapons at all. Valkan watched them march down the loading ramp in neat lines, carrying equipment that looked heavy even for their mechanized suits. These are the famous Death Worlders? His squad leader, Treshik, clicked in disappointment. The Zhutari had heard stories about Earth, a planet with crushing gravity, violent weather, thousands of species that could kill with venom or claws or teeth. The humans had supposedly climbed to the top of their food chain through pure determination. Looking at them now, Valkan wondered if the stories were exaggerated. The briefing room was crowded that evening. The Coalition was losing the war against the Devourers, and everyone knew it. The Devourers were a hive mind species that swept across worlds like a plague, consuming everything in their path. They turned planets into empty husks. They took prisoners only to learn how to kill more efficiently. In 3 years, they had destroyed 12 Coalition worlds and showed no signs of stopping. Commander Rathion, a Shentar with a voice like breaking glass, stood before the assembled troops. Tomorrow we defend the communication array at Sector 7. If it falls, we lose contact with the fleet. If we lose contact with the fleet, Thresh 7 falls. If Thresh 7 falls, they reach the inner colonies within a month. The commander's crystalline body flickered with stress colors. Failure is not acceptable. Valkan glanced at the humans in the room. They sat quietly, listening. One of them was cleaning dirt from under her fingernails with a small knife. Another was half asleep. They did not look like soldiers preparing for a battle that could decide the fate of billions. They looked bored. The attack came at dawn, which on Thresh 7 meant the larger of the two suns broke the horizon. Valkan was in position on the ridge overlooking the communication array. His rifle was charged and ready. His squad was spread out in proper defensive formation, just as they had trained for cycles. Everything was by the book. The Devourers came like a dark wave across the gray sand, thousands of them, moving with the perfect coordination of a single mind controlling countless bodies. They made no sound except the clicking of their many legs on stone. That was part of their psychological warfare, the silence before death. Valkan felt his breathing quicken. His hands trembled slightly. This was normal. This was the body preparing to fight or flee. Every Zhutari warrior knew how to control this fear, to channel it into focused action. He checked his sight lines and waited for the order to fire. The order came. The ridge erupted with weapons fire. Plasma bolts and projectile rounds tore into the Devourer swarm. The front ranks fell, but more surged forward over the bodies. They always did. The Devourers did not care about individual losses. They only cared about the objective: conserve ammunition. Treshik ordered. Controlled bursts. The battle settled into a rhythm. Fire, assess, fire again. The Devourers were getting closer, but that was expected. Coalition air support would arrive soon. They just needed to hold position. Valkan had done this before. He could do it again. Then he heard something from the human position to his left. It sounded like laughter. Valkan risked a glance. A human soldier was on the heavy gun, firing in long bursts that cut through Devourer ranks like a blade through flesh. The human was grinning. Not the stress grimace Valkan had seen on other species. An actual smile showing teeth. First Sergeant Chen, conserve ammunition. The human officer's voice was calm, almost casual. They keep lining up for me, LT. The gunner shouted back. Be rude not to oblige. What kind of species makes jokes during battle? Valkan pushed the thought aside and focused on his own sector. The Devourers were adapting, spreading out to make themselves harder targets. Smart. The hive mind was learning. An explosion rocked the ridge. A Devourer suicide unit had broken through on the right flank. Valkan saw 3 Krovan soldiers go down, their armor torn open. The Devourers swarmed over the gap, mandibles clicking as they tore into Coalition positions. Fall back to secondary positions. Treshik ordered. It was the right call. They could not hold a breached line, but the humans did not fall back. Velkan watched in confusion as a squad of humans charged forward into the gap. Not with the desperate panic of soldiers making a last stand. With organized precision, they moved in pairs, covering each other, firing as they advanced. One human went down with a devourer claw through his leg. He rolled, shot the creature point blank, and kept firing from the ground while another human dragged him to cover. The human with the leg wound was still fighting. Velkan could see the blood, could see the way the leg bent at a wrong angle. That injury should have put the human into shock. The human should have been unconscious or screaming. Instead, he had propped himself against a rock and was calmly shooting devourers with a pistol, calling out targets to his squad. "Chen, you good?" a human voice called. "I've had worse," the wounded human shouted back. "Remember that bar in New Singapore? That was different. You were drunk." "Exactly. This is way better." They were joking. During a battle, while one of them was badly wounded, Velkan felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was not normal behavior. This was not how soldiers acted. The human counterattack bought enough time for the line to stabilize. Air support arrived and drove the devourers back. The battle ended after 2 more hours of fighting. Coalition casualties were light considering. 7 dead, 23 wounded. The humans lost 2 soldiers. The wounded human, Chen, was one of the first to walk to the medical tent. "Well, hup," he had refused the stretcher. That evening, Velkan sat with his squad and watched the humans. They were loud, laughing and arguing about something trivial. One group was playing a game with cards made from ration packaging. Another group was modifying their weapons, making small adjustments that probably violated a dozen safety protocols. "They are strange," Treshik said quietly. "Did you see them charge the gap?" Velkan nodded. "They did not show proper fear." "I think," Treshik said slowly, "that they showed it. They just did not let it stop them." Velkan thought about the wounded human, joking while blood pooled around his shattered leg. He thought about the humans charging forward while every other species fell back. He thought about the smile on the gunner's face. "Commander says the humans come from a death world," Velkan said, "a planet that tries to kill them every day." "Then they are used to danger," Treshik replied. "No." Velkan watched a human medic check on the wounded soldier, both of them laughing about something. "I think it is different. I think they are used to being the danger." That night, Velkan had trouble sleeping. He kept seeing that smile. Those humans running toward the enemy instead of away. In the morning, there would be another battle. The devourers never stopped. They would come again and again until the moon was consumed or the coalition was destroyed. Velkan had thought he understood fear. It was the thing you controlled, the thing you fought against inside yourself. But watching the humans, he realized something that made his skin crawl under his scales. Fear was not what the humans felt. Fear was what they created. The siege began on the 4th day after the humans arrived. The devourers had changed their tactics, surrounding coalition positions in the crystalline canyons and waiting. Just waiting. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. Velkan could feel the stress building in his squad. The Jatari were a careful species, planners who thought 3 moves ahead. Being trapped was against every instinct. By the 2nd day of the siege, Treshik was barely eating. By the 3rd day, 2 soldiers in another Jatari squad had broken down completely, rocking back and forth and refusing to leave their bunker. The Shentar were singing constantly, their usual beautiful harmonies turning sharp and discordant. The Krovan were fighting among themselves over minor issues. Everyone could feel the walls closing in. Supply drops could not get through. The Devourers had brought up anti-air weapons. The coalition was running out of food, water, and ammunition, and then there were the humans. Velkan watched them from his position. They seemed more alert than before, more focused but not panicked. If anything, they appeared calmer. A group of them had organized an exercise routine, doing something they called push-ups in full view of everyone. Another group was teaching a Krovan soldier some kind of word game. The human medic, Chen, was hobbling around on a makeshift crutch checking on wounded soldiers from every species. "How are they so calm?" Velkan asked Treshik on the 3rd night. His squad leader's eyes were dim with exhaustion. "I do not know. Perhaps they do not understand how much danger we are in." But Velkan did not think that was true. The humans understood perfectly well. They just did not seem to care in the same way. On the fourth morning, Velkin was assigned to a patrol with 2 humans. He was not happy about it. Working with unfamiliar soldiers during a siege was risky, but orders were orders. The 2 humans introduced themselves as Corporal Davis and Private Martinez. Davis was tall for a human, with dark skin and patient eyes. Martinez was shorter, constantly moving, checking her weapon and equipment every few minutes. They were checking the canyon perimeter, making sure the Devourers had not found a way through the defensive sensors. It was boring work, which made it dangerous. Boredom led to inattention, and inattention led to death. "So, Velkan," Davis said as they walked, "what do you think of Thresh 7? Velkan blinked in surprise. "Small talk during a siege? It is a strategic location. The communication array is vital. Sure. But I mean the place itself. Pretty nice canyons. Reminds me of Arizona back home. Visited once when I was a kid." Martinez laughed. "Arizona? This is nothing like Arizona. Arizona has actual air you can breathe without a suit." "Details," Davis said with a smile. Velkan did not understand. They were trapped, surrounded, possibly going to die in the next few days, and these humans were discussing tourism. "Does it not bother you?" he asked. "The siege?" Davis glanced at him. "Of course it bothers us. Nobody likes being pinned down. Bad food, recycled water, and aliens trying to eat you. Not exactly a vacation. Then why do you seem so unbothered?" Martinez checked her scanner and then answered. "Because being bothered won't help. We either get out or we don't. Panicking just makes the wait worse." "That is very logical," Velkin said slowly. "Nah," Davis replied. "It's not logical. Logic says we're screwed. This is the opposite of logic. This is humans being stubborn." The sensors detected movement ahead. All 3 of them went silent immediately, weapons ready. Velkan's heart was racing. This could be a scout group, or it could be the beginning of another attack. Davis made hand signals. Velkan had learned the human system during briefings. 3 contacts moving slow, 30 meters ahead in the crystal formations. They advanced carefully using the natural cover. Velkan's training said to fall back and report. But Davis was moving forward and Martinez was circling to the flank. Velkan followed Davis. What else could he do? The Devourers were scouts just as Velkan had feared. 3 of them, the smaller kind with extrasensory organs. They were testing the defenses, looking for weak points. Davis raised his rifle slowly, sighting carefully. He fired 3 times, so fast the shots almost sounded like one. All 3 Devourers dropped. "Clear," Martinez called from the flank. "Confirmed," Davis replied. "Let's mark the bodies and move on, that was it." No discussion, no stress reaction. They had just killed 3 enemies and were moving on as if it was routine. Velkan supposed for them it was routine. Humans had been killing things since before they invented writing. It was what they did. The patrol continued without incident. When they returned to the main defensive position, Velkan sought out the human medic, Chen. The man was sitting outside the medical bunker, his injured leg propped up, reading something on a data pad. "Can I ask you something?" Velkan said. Chen looked up and smiled. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "Your species. You come from Earth, I have read the reports. Your planet is classified as a Class 12 death world. Extreme gravity, dangerous weather, thousands of predator species. Is this true?" "That's pretty accurate, yeah. Earth's a tough place, but it's home. How did your species survive?" Chen thought for a moment. "We're stubborn. Also, we're really good at one thing. We don't give up. Ever. You know what humans used to do before we had weapons? We chased animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. Could take hours, sometimes days, but we just kept following them. Walking, jogging, not even running hard. Just staying on their trail until they literally could not move anymore. Then we killed them." Velkan felt his scales prickle. "That is horrifying." "Yeah," Chen agreed cheerfully. "We call it persistence hunting. Most predators are faster than us, stronger than us, have better weapons than us, so we evolved to just outlast them. We're not the strongest species. We're not the fastest. We're just the ones who keep going when everyone else stops. And this helps you in war? Helps us in everything. You know why the siege doesn't break us like it's breaking other species? Because this is nothing compared to what our ancestors went through. They survived ice ages, droughts, plagues, predators, and each other. Humans have been at war with someone or something for our entire existence. This?" Chen gestured at the canyon around them. "This is just another Tuesday for us." That night, the Devourers attacked. It was not a probing attack or a strategic strike. It was everything they had. Thousands of devourers swarming from every direction, climbing the canyon walls, dropping from above, boiling out of hidden tunnels. The hive mind had decided to end this. The coalition line bent immediately. The Shentar were singing alarm harmonies. The Krovan were firing wildly. Velkan's own squad was falling back to secondary positions, trying to maintain some kind of organization, but the humans were not falling back. Velkan watched them form a defensive square in the center of the position. They were firing in careful rotations, never leaving a side undefended. One human would reload while another covered. When ammunition ran low, they switched to shorter bursts, making every shot count. "They're doing it again," Treshik said, voice tight with something between awe and fear. "They're not retreating." The devourers crashed into the human position like a wave hitting a rock. The humans met them with rifle fire, grenades, and when the enemy got too close, knives and bare hands. Velkan saw a human soldier drive his knife into a devourer's sensory cluster, get grabbed by another, and headbutt it so hard the creature's carapace cracked. The siege had made everyone weak. Everyone except the humans. They seemed to grow more focused as the situation got worse. More determined. "More dangerous. Fall back to the command bunker," the coalition commander ordered over the comms. Fighting withdrawal. The humans were the last ones moving, covering everyone else's retreat. Velkan saw Chen, still on his crutch, shooting devourers with one hand while dragging a wounded Shentar with the other. The medic's face was set in concentration, no fear visible. Just focus. The coalition forces made it to the command bunker. The heavy doors sealed. Outside, the devourers surrounded them completely. They were trapped now, truly trapped. This bunker was the last defensive position. Velkan expected panic. Expected despair. The humans started singing. It was a simple song, rhythmic and repetitive. Something about a woman coming around a mountain. It made no sense, but the humans sang it loudly, defiantly, while they checked weapons and prepared for the next assault. "We evolved to survive," Chen had said. Velkan watched the humans and understood. The Jatari evolved to survive. They ran when they needed to, hid when they could, fought only when necessary. Survival was the goal, but humans evolved to win. The retreat was a nightmare made real. The command bunker had held for 6 hours before the coalition. Commander made the only choice left: evacuate. A dropship had broken through the Devourer blockade for exactly 90 seconds. Not enough time to evacuate everyone, just enough to send a message. Get to the extraction point, 200 kilometers north through enemy territory, and evac ships would try to get them out. 200 kilometers. Through canyons filled with devourers, the coalition forces broke into smaller groups to move faster and draw less attention. Velkan found himself in a mixed unit. 12 humans, 8 Jatari including himself and Treshik, 4 Krovan and 3 Shentar. 27 soldiers, 5 of them wounded. They had enough ammunition for maybe 2 firefights. Food for 3 days if they rationed carefully. Water for 2. The journey would take at least 5 days on foot. "We're not going to make it," one of the Shentar sang quietly that first night. Her name was something Velkan's translator rendered as crystal tone. The mathematics are clear. Insufficient supplies, insufficient ammunition, too many wounded. She was right. Velkan knew she was right. Even Treshik, who never admitted defeat, had the dull look of someone who had accepted death. But the human sergeant, a man named Okonkwo with shoulders like a thorgan, simply shook his head. "Mathematics don't account for stubbornness. We're making it." "How?" Crystal Tone demanded. "Show me the logic." "There is no logic," Okonkwo replied. "We're going to make it because the alternative is dying out here, and I'm not ready to die today. Simple as that." On the second day, they ran into a devourer patrol, 6 of the creatures moving through a narrow canyon. The logical thing to do was hide, wait for them to pass, then continue. That was what Velkan's training said. That was what every tactical manual said. The humans voted to kill them instead. "They've seen our tracks," a human named Zhao explained. "If we let them live, they report back to the hive mind. Then we have hunters on our trail. If we attack, the sounds of battle will draw more," Treshik argued. "Probably," Zhao agreed. "But if we're quiet about it, maybe not." Velkan wanted to ask how you could be quiet about a battle. He got his answer 30 minutes later. The humans moved like ghosts. No, not ghosts. Ghosts were peaceful. The humans moved like predators. They split up, circling the devourers from multiple angles. They used hand signals, perfect coordination without a word spoken. When they struck, it was with knives, not guns. Velkan watched from his position as a human soldier jumped onto a devourer's back, wrapped his arm around what passed for its neck, and drove a blade into the base of its skull. The creature tried to scream. The human clamped a hand over its mandibles, holding it silent while it died. 6 devourers dead in less than a minute, barely a sound made. The humans dragged the bodies into a crevice and covered them with rocks. "Your species is good at this," Velkan said to Zhao afterward. His voice was shaking. Zhao cleaned her knife without looking at him. "Yeah, we've had a lot of practice killing things quietly. Humans spent thousands of years hunting animals that could hear better, see better, smell better than us. We learned to be very, very quiet when we needed to be." On the 3rd day, they lost the first soldier, one of the Krovan named Rekthar. He had been wounded in the retreat and the wound was infected. The human medic, Chen, did everything possible, but Chen was working with almost no supplies. Rekthar died quietly that night, surrounded by his squad mates. They buried him in the rocks and moved on. They had no choice. On the 4th day, one of the Zhutari named Velmis sat down and refused to continue. "I cannot," he said simply. "I am finished." Velkan understood. Velmis was old for a Zhutari, nearly 60 cycles. This kind of physical strain was breaking his body down. He was choosing an honorable death rather than slowing down the group. "Get up," Sergeant Okonkwo said. "I cannot," Velmis repeated. "You can," Okonkwo said. "I've seen you walk all day. Your legs work fine." "My spirit is broken," Velmis said with dignity. "I am old. I have lived a good life. Let me rest." Okonkwo stared at him for a long moment. Then he picked Velmis up, threw him over his shoulder and started walking. "You can rest when we get to the extraction point," Velmis protested. Okonkwo ignored him. The sergeant carried the old Zhutari for 6 hours before Velmis finally agreed to walk on his own. The human had not shown any strain, had not complained, had simply decided that everyone was making it out and refused to accept any other outcome. That night, Velkan asked Chen about it. "Why? Why does your sergeant care so much about a soldier from another species?" Chen was changing the bandage on his leg wound. It looked terrible, infected and swollen. He should have been dead from shock days ago. "Because Okonkwo said everyone's making it out. Once he decides something, he doesn't change his mind. It's a human thing. We're really bad at accepting defeat. But Velmis is not even your species. Doesn't matter. He's a soldier. He's one of us. That's enough." Velkan thought about this. The Zhutari protected their own species first. Other species were allies, but in a crisis you saved your own kind. It was logical, practical, survival-focused. But humans seemed to have a different calculation. Once they decided someone was part of their group, that person was family. And humans protected their family with irrational desperation. On the 5th day, they found the Devourer outpost blocking their path. It was a small outpost, maybe 20 Devourers, guarding a narrow pass that was the only route to the extraction point. Going around would add 2 days to their journey. They did not have 2 days. The extraction window was in 14 hours. "We find another route," Crystal Tone sang. "This is impassable. We go through," Okonkwo said, "through 20 Devourers. With our supplies and ammunition? Suicidal, probably. But I'm not walking an extra 2 days. We attack tonight." The planning session was quick. The humans drew diagrams in the dirt, showing where each person would go, what each person would do. Velkan listened and felt cold fear spreading through his body. This was not a military plan. This was barely controlled chaos. "This is insane," Trishik said. "Yes," Okonkwo agreed, "but it's the kind of insane that might work." "You in?" Treshik looked at Velkan. Velkan looked at the other Zhutari. They were exhausted, broken, running on nothing but willpower. If they tried to walk another 2 days, half of them would die. If they attacked the outpost, half of them would die. Either way, death was coming. "We are in," Velkan heard himself say. The attack started at midnight. The humans moved first, silent as death, slipping between Devourer sentries. They took out the perimeter guards with knives. Then they set up firing positions and waited. The signal came. A human threw something into the center of the outpost. It was not a grenade. It was a speaker, playing the scream of a Devourer at maximum volume. The outpost erupted in confusion. Devourers ran toward the sound, looking for the wounded comrade that did not exist. The humans opened fire from 3 sides. The Devourers scattered, trying to find cover, trying to understand where the attack was coming from. Velkin fired from his position, his hands steady now despite the fear. He shot a Devourer that was trying to flank the human position. He shot another that was calling for reinforcements. He was not thinking anymore. He was just acting, following the human plan, trusting that the humans knew what they were doing. The battle lasted 9 minutes. When it was over, all 20 Devourers were dead. The coalition group had lost 1 Krovan and 1 human. 4 more were wounded, including Okonkwo, who had taken a claw slash across his shoulder. They moved through the pass quickly, knowing more Devourers would come. Chen worked on Okonkwo's wound while they walked. The sergeant did not slow down, did not acknowledge the pain. He just kept going. Velkin walked beside Zhao. "Your species is terrifying," he said quietly. Zhao looked at him and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just made a successful kill. "You're only just now figuring that out?" They reached the extraction point with 2 hours to spare. The evacuation ships came down through heavy fire, landed just long enough to load everyone aboard, and punched back into orbit. Velkin collapsed into a seat, his body finally giving out. He looked around the ship, saw humans helping wounded soldiers from every species, saw Okonkwo doing a head count making sure everyone made it, saw Chen joking with Velmis, who was crying with relief. They had walked 200 kilometers through enemy territory. They had fought when logic said to hide. They had carried the wounded when logic said to leave them. They had attacked when logic said to retreat. They had survived because the humans did not understand the word. Impossible. Velkin closed his eyes and tried not to think about what kind of species could ignore logic, ignore survival instinct, ignore every rational thought, and simply decide to win through pure stubborn will. He failed. The image of those humans moving through the Devourer outpost would stay with him forever. They were not soldiers in that moment. They were something older, something from before civilization, something that climbed to the top of Earth's food chain by being more terrifying than anything that wanted to eat them. And Velkin was very, very glad they were on his side. The mining facility was supposed to be abandoned. According to intelligence reports, the Devourers had stripped it 6 months ago and moved on. It was just a shell now, empty tunnels and broken equipment, scattered across 5 square kilometers of rocky ground. It was also the only defensible position between their crashed evacuation ship and coalition lines. The ship had taken damage during the retreat from Thresh 7. Pilot managed to get them down, but not anywhere useful. They were 40 kilometers behind enemy lines with 27 survivors, limited ammunition, and no communication with command. A rescue team was coming, but it would take at least 14 hours to fight through Devourer territory to reach them. 14 hours. That was all they had to survive. Velkin had stopped being surprised by human decisions. When Sergeant Okonkwo said they were setting up at the mining facility, Velkin just started walking. The humans knew what they were doing, even when what they were doing seemed insane. The facility was worse than the reports suggested. Walls were crumbling. The roof was half collapsed. The automated defenses were long dead, but it had good sight lines, multiple levels for defense, and only 3 main approaches. The humans said it would work. Velkin was too tired to argue. They had been running and fighting for 16 days now. Velkin had lost weight he did not have to lose. His scales were dull from dehydration. His hands shook constantly. Treshik was barely conscious, moving on autopilot. Crystaltone had stopped singing 3 days ago, just humming quietly to herself. The other Zertari were in similar condition. The Krovan were worse. 2 of them were delirious with fever from infected wounds. The third, Kresh, was functional but had the empty eyes of someone who had given up inside. The humans looked terrible too. Thinner, covered in bruises and cuts, uniforms torn and patched a dozen times. Chen could barely walk on his injured leg. Okonkwo had his arm in a makeshift sling. Zhao had a bandage wrapped around her head covering some injury to her ear, but their eyes were still clear. Still focused. Still alert. "How are you still going?" Velkin asked Corporal Davis as they set up firing positions. Davis checked his rifle mechanism and shrugged. "What else are we going to do? Lay down and die? That's boring. You are not tired? I'm exhausted. Been exhausted for 2 weeks. But being tired won't change anything, so I just ignore it. You cannot just ignore physical limits. Davis smiled. Sure we can. Humans are really good at ignoring things we don't like. Pain, fear, exhaustion, logic. We just decide those things don't matter and keep going. It's probably a design flaw in our brains, honestly, but it comes in handy sometimes. The Devourers found them after 8 hours. Velkan saw them on the horizon scanners. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. A proper hunter swarm. The kind the hive mind sent when it wanted something dead. They moved in that terrible coordinated silence, flowing across the rocky ground like oil. Contact, Velkan reported over comms. Multiple hostiles approaching from the east. Copy that, Okonkwo's voice came back. Everyone to positions. This is going to get loud. The first wave hit an hour later. The Devourers tested the defenses, probing for weak points. The Coalition defenders fired carefully, conserving ammunition. Every shot had to count. They drove the first wave back after 20 minutes of fighting. The second wave came 30 minutes later. Larger, more aggressive. The Devourers knew where the defenders were now. They focused their attack on the weakest section of wall. Velkan watched his ammunition counter drop. 50 rounds, 40, 30, conserve ammo, Okonkwo ordered. Controlled bursts only. The second wave broke against their defenses. Barely. Velkan had 15 rounds left. The third wave came at sunset. Even larger than before. The Devourers were committing serious forces now. They wanted this facility, wanted these defenders dead. The hive mind had decided. Velkan fired his last magazine. Watched the counter drop to 0. He switched to his sidearm. The pistol had 1 magazine left. 14 shots. Around him, other soldiers were running out of ammunition too. The Krovan had switched to their backup weapons. Crystal Tone was singing a death hymn, beautiful and sad. Treshik was just staring at his empty rifle, waiting. Then Velkan heard something he did not expect. He heard humans laughing, not the stressed laughter of someone broken. Real laughter, the kind people made at jokes. Corporal Zhao was laughing so hard she was crying. What could possibly be funny right now? Velkan demanded. Zhao gasped for breath between laughs. I just realized something. We're out of ammo. We're surrounded by aliens who want to eat us. We're exhausted, wounded, and dying. And you know what? I'm just so mad about it. I didn't come all this way just to die in some random mining facility. Private Martinez joined the laughter. Right, like this whole situation is offensive. The disrespect of it all. Are you having a breakdown? Velkan asked carefully. Humans under extreme stress could lose their grip on reality. He had read about it. No, Zhao said, wiping her eyes. No, I'm fine. I'm just really, really angry. And when humans get angry enough, we stop thinking and start doing stupid things. What kind of stupid things? Martinez picked up her empty rifle and detached the bayonet. It was a simple blade, maybe 30 centimeters long. She clicked it onto her pistol with practiced ease. The kind where we make it hurt. Understanding hit Velkan like cold water. You are going to fight them in close combat. We're out of bullets, Zhao said simply. What else are we going to do? Die with honor at range like civilized soldiers. Yeah, but we're not civilized, Martinez said cheerfully. We're humans. We're the species that invented warfare before we invented farming. Fighting is what we do. Sergeant Okonkwo's voice came over the comms. All personnel be advised. Ammunition is depleted. We are switching to close quarters combat. If you are not human and have any bullets left, now would be a great time to use them. Humans fix bayonets. Let's show these things what a bad idea this was. Velkan heard the clicks of blades being attached to rifles all around the facility. The humans were preparing for hand-to-hand combat with creatures that had natural weapons, armor, and the backing of a hive mind. They were going to die. Everyone knew it. But the humans were smiling. The fourth wave came as the last sun set. The Devourers swarmed up the walls through the breaches, dropping from above. They came in darkness, as they always did, clicking and hissing. Velkan fired his pistol until it clicked empty. Then he just held it, frozen. A Devourer lunged at him. He closed his eyes, waiting for death. The death did not come. He opened his eyes to see Corporal Davis standing over the dead Devourer, his bayonet slick with dark blood. Stay behind me, Davis said calmly. This is going to get messy. Messy was not the right word. The humans fought with a ferocity Velkan had never witnessed. They used their rifles as clubs, their bayonets as spears, their fists and feet and heads as weapons. When a human went down, another would pull them up. When a human was grabbed, 3 others would attack the Devourer holding them. Velkan saw Private Martinez jump onto a devourer's back, wrap her legs around it and drive her knife into its sensory organs over and over, while it tried to shake her off. He saw Chen, still limping on his bad leg, use his crutch to smash a devourer's legs out from under it, then stomp on its head until it stopped moving. He saw Sergeant Okonkwo, wounded and exhausted, pick up a piece of broken equipment and swing it like a club, roaring something in his native language that the translator could not interpret. The devourers began to hesitate. Velkan saw it. The hive mind was processing new information. These defenders should have been broken by now. They were out of ammunition. They were wounded and tired. They should have surrendered or fled. But humans did not surrender. They did not flee. They just got angrier. The fighting continued for 3 hours. At some point, Velkan stopped being frozen and started helping. He used his claws, weak as they were. He dragged wounded soldiers to cover. He did what he could. Then the alarm started wailing. The facility's old reactor was breached. Radiation was leaking into the complex. In a few hours, everyone inside would be dead from exposure. Fall back to the upper levels, Okonkwo ordered. Get away from the reactor. But the humans were not falling back. They were moving toward the reactor. What are you doing? Crystal Tone sang in horror. That is death. We're already dead, Joe shouted back. Might as well make it count. Devourers this way. Come get us. The humans were using the radiation as a weapon. They were deliberately luring devourers into the contaminated zones, letting their enemies kill themselves chasing human soldiers who were already dying. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was the most terrifying tactical decision Velkan had ever witnessed. The humans fought for another hour in the radioactive sections of the facility. They were dying, their bodies breaking down from radiation sickness, but they kept fighting, kept killing, kept smiling those terrible predator smiles. When the rescue ships finally arrived, they found the humans still standing. Surrounded by hundreds of dead devourers, their skin was burned from radiation. They were bleeding from a dozen wounds, but they were alive. Velkan collapsed as the rescue team secured the facility. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was Sergeant Okonkwo, skin blackened from radiation burns, helping a Jatari soldier onto a stretcher. The human was still smiling. Velkan woke up 6 weeks later in a coalition medical facility orbiting a planet whose name he could not remember. His body felt strange, lighter somehow. The doctors told him he had been in a medical coma while they treated the radiation exposure. They told him he was lucky to be alive. They told him 8 humans had died from their injuries and radiation sickness after the mining facility rescue. Sergeant Okonkwo was not one of them. The human had spent 4 weeks in critical condition, but had survived. Humans, the doctors said with a mixture of respect and confusion, were remarkably hard to kill. Velkan asked about the others. Treshik was alive, recovering in another ward. Crystal Tone had survived but would never sing properly again, her vocal crystals damaged by stress. Velmis, the old Zertari that Okonkwo had carried, was alive and had requested to meet with Velkan when he woke up. The meeting with Coalition Command came on Velkan's 3rd day of consciousness. 3 high-ranking officers, a Shentar admiral, a Thorgan general, and a Jatari strategic coordinator. They had questions. Many questions. Describe the human combat behavior during the siege at Thresh 7, the Shentar sang. Velkan described it. The charging into enemy fire. The refusal to retreat. The wounded continuing to fight. Describe the human decision-making during the retreat through enemy territory. Velkan described it. The night raids. The insistence on carrying wounded from other species. The attack on the Devourer outpost when all logic said to find another route. Describe the final stand at the mining facility. Velkan described it. The hand-to-hand combat. The use of radiation as a weapon. The humans fighting while their bodies broke down from exposure. The officers listened in silence. When Velkan finished, the Thorgan general spoke in his rumbling voice. These tactics are disturbing. The humans show a disregard for their own survival that borders on suicidal behavior. Some members of the Coalition Council believe the human alliance should be reconsidered. Velkan felt anger rise in his chest. They saved my life. They saved all of our lives. At tremendous cost to themselves, the Jatari coordinator said. 8 human soldiers dead from radiation exposure. 12 more permanently disabled. all to hold a position that had no strategic value. The mining facility was abandoned, worthless. The facility had us in it, Velkin said quietly. 27 coalition soldiers from multiple species. The humans decided that was valuable enough. Emotional decision-making, the coordinator said. Not logical. Yes, Velkin agreed. Not logical at all. But it worked. We survived because the humans refused to accept that we might not. The Shentar Admiral's crystals flickered with thought colors. We need to understand what makes humans so effective in combat. You spent more time with them than any other Zertari soldier. What did you learn? Velkan thought carefully. I learned that humans do not experience fear differently than we do. They feel it just as strongly, but they have learned to use it. They turn their fear into anger, and their anger into action. They do not fight to survive. They fight to win, and those are very different motivations. Explain. We fight until fighting becomes too costly, then we retreat. We calculate odds and make logical decisions. Humans calculate odds and then ignore them if they do not like the answer. They have a concept they call spite, fighting on purely because giving up would make the enemy happy. It is irrational. It is also terrifyingly effective. The meeting continued for 2 more hours. Velkin answered every question as honestly as he could. When it was over, the officers thanked him and left. He did not know what decision they would make about the human alliance. 3 days later, Velkin was cleared to visit other patients. He found Chen in the rehabilitation ward, working with a physical therapist. The human's leg had healed poorly and would never be the same. Chen would walk with a limp for the rest of his life. Hey, Velkin, Chen said with a smile. Good to see you up and moving. Good to see you alive, Velkan replied. He sat down carefully. I heard about the others. I'm sorry, Chen's smile faded. Yeah, we lost some good people. Martinez didn't make it. Davis neither. Radiation got them before the medics could stabilize them. He was quiet for a moment. But 27 people got on those rescue ships. 27 people who would have died if we hadn't held that facility. That's what matters. The Coalition Command is questioning human tactics. They think you take too many risks. We do take too many risks, Chen agreed. But we also get results. How many times have humans held positions that should have been overrun? How many times have we pushed through situations that should have killed us? Many times. Perhaps too many. Chen looked at him seriously. You know what the real difference is? It's not that we're stronger or tougher. It's that we refuse to quit. Every human grows up learning stories about people who succeeded against impossible odds. Underdogs who won through pure determination. It's in our culture, our history, our entire identity. We're the species that decided we could fly. So we built machines until one worked. We decided we could go to space, so we built rockets until we made it. We decided we could cure diseases, so we invented medicine. Humans don't accept no for an answer. That is insane, Velkan said. Yep, but it's who we are. Velkan visited Sergeant Okonkwo the next day. The human was sitting up in bed looking thinner and older but alive. His skin still showed signs of radiation damage, dark patches that would probably never fully heal. Velkan, Okonkwo said warmly. Heard you were asking about everyone. Good to see you. They talked for a while about recovery, about the other soldiers, about everything except the battle. Finally, Velkan asked the question that had been bothering him. Why did you carry Velmis? During the retreat, you could have left him. It would have been logical. He had given up. Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. You know what humans say? We say leave no one behind. It's not logical. It's not efficient. But it's important. Because the moment we start deciding some people aren't worth saving, we stop being people worth following. Velmis was a soldier. He was tired and hurting and ready to give up. But he was one of us. So I carried him. Even though it slowed you down. Even though it put you at risk. Even though, Okonkwo agreed. Because that's what humans do. We're loyal to a fault. Sometimes literally to a fault. We'll die for people we barely know if we've decided they're part of our group. It's probably a survival trait from when we lived in small tribes. But it works in war, too. The Coalition Command may decide your species is too dangerous to work with. Okonkwo smiled. Then they're idiots. We're winning this war. You know why? Not because we have better weapons or tactics. Because we refuse to lose. The Devourers are learning that. Every time they think they've broken us, we come back harder. Eventually, they're going to realize that fighting humans is more trouble than it's worth. 2 weeks later, The coalition made their decision. They were expanding human integration into joint forces. They wanted human trainers to teach other species about human tactics and persistence. They wanted human officers embedded in every major fleet. Velkan was offered a choice. Return to a Jatari-only unit, or volunteer to continue serving with human forces. He chose the humans. 6 months later, Velkan stood on the bridge of a coalition warship, watching the battle unfold on the tactical display. A major Devourer fleet had been engaged near a colony world. The fighting was brutal. Coalition forces were holding but barely. Then the Devourers did something they had never done before. They retreated. Not a tactical withdrawal, a full retreat. They jumped to faster than light speed and fled. What happened? The Shentar captain sang in confusion. We were evenly matched. Why did they run? Velkan looked at the tactical display. He saw the human heavy cruiser squadron that had just arrived. He saw the identification codes. He recognized some of the ship names. Ships that had fought at Thresh 7. Ships that had survived impossible battles through sheer stubbornness. They ran because they learned, Velkan said quietly. The hive mind shares information. It knows what happens when you fight humans. You might win the battle, but the humans will keep coming back. Again and again. They will fight you when they're outgunned. They'll fight you when they're wounded. They'll fight you when every logical calculation says they should run. And eventually they'll win, not through superior force, through refusal to accept any other outcome. The captain's crystals flickered with understanding. They learned to fear us. No, Velkan corrected. They learned to fear them. He gestured at the human ships on the display. The Devourers evolved to consume. We evolved to survive. Humans evolved to win, and now the Devourers understand what that means. That night, Velkan attended a memorial service for the soldiers lost at the mining facility. It was a human ceremony, simple and emotional. People spoke about their fallen comrades. They told stories, some sad, some funny. They cried openly, not ashamed of their grief. Velmis was there, standing straight and proud despite his age. I was ready to die, he told the gathered soldiers. I had accepted it. But Sergeant Okonkwo decided I was not allowed to die. He carried me until I remembered why I wanted to live. That is what humans do. They carry you when you cannot carry yourself. Velkan stood and spoke as well. He talked about watching humans fight for the first time, about his confusion and fear.